Imagine this. You've recently been promoted and you are now tasked with leading a virtual team scattered across the globe. One person is in New York, another is in Frankfurt, one person in South Africa, and another in Japan. Everyone brings their own distinct cultural lens, shaped by their own distinct cultural values and expectations. The stakes are high, and it is your job to bring them together, to create a shared vision, foster collaboration, and drive success. Pause and think. Do you have the skills needed to bring these diverse perspectives together? I'm curious, who has ever lived in another country? Love that. Or maybe you're not from the United States, but you've been living here for a few or more years? Lovely. Well, then you know, and research tells us that experiencing another country firsthand is the most powerful way to learn about its people, customs, and way of life. Living and working abroad challenges you to adapt to new norms, contrasting ways of thinking, and unfamiliar situations. But in today's interconnected world, global leadership is more than recognizing cultural differences. It's about learning how to navigate them. But today's challenge, many leaders lack the nuanced skills to manage this complexity. And it's not easy. Culture is complicated, and so are people. Leadership expectations can shift dramatically, and not just from one country to another, but within them. And that's what makes leading across cultures so challenging, and why adaptability isn't just helpful, it is necessary. Adapting requires you to shift your mindset and actions, especially where attitudes and behaviors conflict. It's about being flexible and finding new ways to manage whatever comes your way. Like when you have a second child and they are the complete opposite of your first, if you do not adapt to them, everyone is going to suffer. Okay, suffer might be a little dramatic in that example, but in a global context, leadership missteps can ripple far and wide. When leaders do not adapt, misunderstandings escalate, opportunities are missed, and trust is lost, costing leaders their effectiveness and organizations their competitive edge, and sometimes millions of dollars. Let's take Uber, for example. Back in 2016, Uber had an amazing reputation. It had strong financial backing and a proven business model. When they moved to China, it was new territory in more than one way. Uber underestimated cultural and market differences. They struggled to adapt to local business norms. In China, success isn't just about having a great product, it's about the relationships that you build. So after 2 years and losing $2 billion, Uber decided to leave China and explore other markets. So where do we go from here? How do we learn to be more adaptable? Well, I understand the complexities of navigating diverse environments because I have lived in them. First, I come from a multicultural household. I am the proud Black and Japanese adopted daughter of a Black, Korean, and Japanese mother who was born and raised in Southern California, and a Black and white dad who has cultural influences from the Virgin Islands and grew up in New York. Did you catch all of that? If you aren't familiar with mothers from Eastern cultures, you might be shocked when I tell you that my quiet but very honest Korean and Japanese grandmother had no problem telling me I had gained the freshman 15 when I came home from spring break. On the other hand, I spent every summer with my Black grandfather. Now, he and I bonded over our love for food. He always made sure that we feasted on my favorite, Alaskan king crab legs, and that I had the big box of Cocoa Puffs in the pantry so that I could start my morning off the right way with chocolate. It's fair to say that I grew up in a true East versus West household, but this applies to more than my ethnicity. It applies to geography too. My dad served 25 years in the Air Force, and growing up, I moved across 3 very different countries: the United States, England, and Japan. Although my dad did retire from the military when I was in elementary school, that itch to move every few years stayed with him. And as if fitting in as a teenager wasn't hard enough, I had to do it 4 times. I went to 4 high schools, 2 in Japan, surrounded by military families across the United States, 1 in California and 1 in Hawaii, 2 of the most diverse states in the country. Years later, as a researcher in global leader development, I've come to see how my lived experiences weren't just my personal lessons, it was my global leader training. Now, my work blends these lived experiences with academic insights to explore how leaders can develop and be more adaptable in this constantly changing world that we live in. So now I'd like to share a few of these lived training moments with you and some strategies that you can use today to become more adaptable. First, recognize different does not mean wrong. Success can look differently in different cultures and still be just as effective. Let's take this simple example. In California, when it's not rush hour between the hours of 10 to 11 a.m., highways can feel like racetracks, cars weaving and speeding past each other. But when I moved to Hawaii, driving was different. Slower, more relaxed. And people would let me merge without hesitation. And I'd often see a hand popping out the window flashing a shaka. It's all good, no rush, no stress. So when I moved to Hawaii, I had to learn how to slow down, both in principle and in practice. Let's consider this other example. In Japan, the decision-making process is slower than the United States. Notice I didn't say slow, just slower. Here, data is gathered and analyzed, a wide variety of perspectives are included, suggestions are deliberated, and many people are allowed to participate in the process. And that's because ideally consensus needs to be reached. Global leader researchers House and colleagues found that in the US, leadership culture prioritizes speed and decisiveness. But for an American in Japan, this process can feel time-consuming and super frustrating. But from the Japanese perspective, this leads to the best decisions. So the next time you're in a new environment, check your assumptions of what you may feel is the best course of action. Could there be an alternative approach to reaching your goal? Your way may not be the best way, and it is definitely not the only way. Next, learn to sit back and pay attention. When I moved to Japan, culture shock hit me. As an American and as the daughter of a man who swears New York City is the greatest place on earth, I had a certain image of train stations. Crowds of people moving past each other, conversations overlapping, the sound of music from street performers, and the occasional announcement about a delayed train. But in Japan, there was an order. People walking up the stairs on the right side, people walking down the stairs on the left side. There was a precision. Trains arriving exactly on time and leaving on time down to the minute. There was silence, as if the whole train station had taken a vow. It was as quiet as a Zen garden. I remember one of the first times I went to a train station in Japan with my American friends. We were laughing, talking, playing music on our phones, excited about the opportunity to go off base and explore Tokyo. I remember feeling like something was off though. I stopped to listen and look around. All I heard was us. All I saw were eyes staring at us, stares that indicated we were not respecting the local norms. My friends didn't seem to notice, but I did. And this moment stuck with me. It taught me to pay attention to the people and to the unspoken rhythms of a place. Adapting isn't just about reacting to those differences, it's about anticipating them. You can't just respond to the cultural cues after the fact, you have to actively look for them. Just know that when you go into a new, unfamiliar situation, it's going to feel unfamiliar to you. So how do you pick up on these cultural cues? Well, you already know how to do it. Have you ever had a casual conversation with your friend in the break room and then go into a meeting and everybody's quiet and it's a little bit more formal? You check yourself, right? Or maybe you are used to wearing your shoes on in the house and you walk into somebody else's house and they are taking their shoes off. Hopefully you're taking your shoes off as well. It's possible, you can do it. So I challenge you to pick up on an unspoken cue that you may have overlooked before. And finally, when you feel that discomfort, just lean in. I was on a business trip in China early in my career. I went to a dinner and I sat at a large round table with a group of male Chinese university leaders who spoke just as much English as I did Mandarin. I was a little uncomfortable and nervous. Not only did I not speak Mandarin fluently, but I was the only female and I was the only foreigner at the table. So I was nervous about how I would fit into the conversation, the camaraderie, the cultural rituals unfolding around me. But instead of sitting back, I decided to lean in. I asked questions, I shared stories about myself, responded in the bits of Mandarin I knew, even if I was pronouncing it wrong. They ultimately appreciated that. And I focused on what I could understand: the laughter, the fellowship, the sense of letting loose after a long day. And when somebody lifted their drink for a toast, I followed. I lifted my glass, clinked it confidently, and said, "Ganbei," and take whatever shot was in my cup. So as the night went on, you can imagine my energy shifted, probably also because of the alcohol, but my energy shifted and I was no longer the foreign observer cautiously just absorbing the scene. I was a part of the scene. So I was able to also build a connection with these leaders that I may have never been able to build in a formal meeting. Adaptability isn't about knowing every language or every custom because it is just not realistic. Sometimes adapting is about adjusting and not resisting that discomfort, to engage instead of disengaging. This is ultimately how we will learn, connect, and grow. So, although I was an angry teen for having to go to 4 high schools, I ultimately now appreciate what those experiences did for me. I'm not suggesting that you move to a new country every year. And I'm definitely not suggesting you move your high schooler around every year to prepare them to be the next future global leader. I'm simply encouraging you to be more aware and pay attention to those around you. Begin building your confidence to be more adaptable, because we need leaders who can navigate the constantly changing world that we live in and those that can rise to that challenge. So now I'd like to return to the team that I introduced you to in the beginning, but I pose you with a different question now. Do you have the ability to develop the skills to bring these diverse perspectives together? I definitely think you do. Thank you.